well, over my depression from getting battered and taking one for the team, got back to work. And like a good libertarian, working on a business to keep from paying too much taxes, so we got back into the real estate investing game. But that's not where my career was. Most of my career has been in energy. My firm had a quote that energy is life and the rest is just details. And then what we'd realized is when clean tech and climate change and some of the new technologies started to show up on the scene about 2000, that the world was mispricing risk in energy on a grand scale. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm sitting up here with a panel with 3 entrepreneurs in energy. Craig is an executive at SGR Energy and formerly founder of Third Coast Resources. Navid, I guess this is startup number 2, 3, 4 for you in energy?
Second startup, not quite a startup. We're a venture fund in energy, new source of energy.
And if I understand Amir correctly, UEC is a publicly traded uranium development company, but this is your 3rd startup as well, correct?
Yeah, I guess you could call us a New York Stock Exchange listed startup, right?
Fair enough.
15 years in the making.
Fair enough. So we're going to start out on risk. Question of the day to open, top 3 risks in the energy markets for investors, right? Where are the profits, where are the risks? So I'd like each one of you to throw out what you think is the biggest risk. Amir, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll start by really kind of picking on Russia and maybe to some extent highlighting national security and energy security risk. And the reason why I say that is because there really is a fundamental difference between East and West when it comes to the fact that most of my competition, you just introduced me as an entrepreneur. What does that mean? I got to get out there, I got to raise capital, I got to think about shareholder return. Most of my Russian competition are state-owned companies. As an entrepreneur, we think about how we operate in a free market economy. My competition in China is state-owned companies, Russian state-owned companies. And so today, there's a great national security issue around the fact that free market economies and free market companies, all 3 guys here are entrepreneurs, are having to really compete with Putin, are having to compete with Xi Jinping. When it comes to uranium, this is an issue that has got the attention of the President of the US. And it's fascinating to be talking to you about this right now because 3 days ago, President Trump issued a White House memorandum declaring that there's a national security risk that the United States is importing 99% of its uranium requirements.
All right. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Right. Energy security or the Putin risk. Is that your risk, or what do you got for us?
For us, for my viewpoint, the biggest risk is really government regulation. And navigating the ever-changing world that is government regulation. And the biggest example of this in the short term is we're 6 months away, or less than 6 months away, from one of the biggest changes to ever impact the oil industry ever, with the IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, sulfur cap for fuel that's burned at sea. And the sulfur cap is basically shrinking by 85%. And so this is going to affect pricing for everything that is shipped. It's going to affect pricing for diesel fuel in the US. So if you have an F-250 pickup truck, you might want to think about selling before the end of the year. But this is a major risk that's affecting the industry that not very many people outside the industry are even talking about.
All right, so I got 2 risks and they're both political. Navid, yes, no?
So in terms of risks, what I see out there is a little bit different because we're working on a new source of energy that is more explosive than any fossil fuel that we have. So there's a way to get energy out of the hydrogen atom. We're scientists. It's 100 times more energetic than any fossil fuel. So our risks are IP. Will the IP of this new source of energy be respected by China? So trade war issues are important. Will America dominate this new energy landscape that's coming? And I know most people here wouldn't even know what we're talking about, so come over to our booth and you can find out more. So our interests are energy security, energy dominance in the United States. This is American technology founded in New Jersey. So we're interested in IP, and those are some of the risks that we see, especially around this new source of energy, because China's working on this, and so is Russia.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so we're going to let the audience vote. And see which one of you guys is smarter than me. The Putin risk, and I can't see y'all because of the lights, you're going to have to clap. Who likes the Putin risk as the biggest risk on the stage? You're not getting much there, Amir. Craig? Political risk. Government regulation is the biggest risk in the energy sector. Craig, I think that was a crowd pleaser. Okay. All right, Navid, we got some tech risk here. What do you got to think about? Tech risk in the energy sector is the biggest risk investors are facing. Guys, come on. Are my panelists just not doing their job, or are you not doing your job? Okay, we're going to give the win to Craig for government regulation. My firm used to always figure that energy is not actually a free market. It never has been. It's always quasi-political. It has been since the beginning of the market. And you just kind of got to live and deal with that. And that'll push us into kind of the next question is impact on the energy sector, and more particularly investors in the energy sector from climate change. Both climate change natively and climate change policies coming from government. Who are the big winners and losers, and when is it going to hit?
I think for the first time, what we're seeing in the field that I'm in with nuclear power, we're seeing growing bipartisan support in DC for innovation and modernization when it comes to nuclear energy. There's growing support from climate organizations that recognize we can't meet the targets to reduce global temperatures if we don't have large baseload carbon emission-free electricity as part of the energy mix, not to displace other sources. And so it's for the first time, the narrative has changed, where you got Bill Gates investing his own money, tweeting on a weekly basis about nuclear power and how it's one of the only ways to save the planet. 1 in every 5 households in the United States is already powered with nuclear energy. And the fact that there's bipartisan support may mean that you don't get as much media attention, because the media doesn't like to cover anything that has bipartisan support. But the reality is that the Union of Concerned Scientists, Sierra Club, climate organizations that were previously against nuclear power are now coming around and basically supporting it as a vital solution in the energy mix to make sure we can really handle both energy security but also the environment at the same time. So this kind of policy and capital coming in, I think can set up nuclear power and the uranium side, which is the fuel for nuclear power, to really be a big winner for investors.
So you're calling nuclear the winner. Craig, biggest loser.
Biggest losers are obviously is the tremendous amount of uphill battle that oil companies and oil entrepreneurs in the oil industry or the energy industry as a whole, the piling bureaucracy that they're constantly having to face because of what's happening, the fear of climate change. And I think they're going to be the big losers, because not only they're going to still be not required, but they still have an obligation to deliver energy to the world, but they're making it more difficult and more difficult and more difficult as they go along. And so they're the big losers, but is that really going to impact what, 30 years from now, are they really going to be supplying less energy? No, there's 1 billion barrels per day of demand from the world market as we speak that's growing every year. I don't see that going backwards. Actually, I see it going forwards.
But Navid, if you have to place $1 million bet now, cannot be on any investment on this stage, on climate change risk, what are you going to bet to make the money? Where are you going to put your $1 million?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear it.
You got $1 million, you got to spend it. You're taking a hedge bet against climate change. You want to make money off of that impact. Where are you putting your cash? And you can't invest it in your company or anything on this stage.
Short call.
Short call? Simple short call. You think you can hold the short long enough?
Yes. So
Okay.
it's pretty clear that nations are saying that coal is a dirty fuel source, and there's no argument against that. You don't have to get into debates about climate change. Just the fact is, it's not. Oil is cleaner than coal. So period. You don't want to use coal. So I think that's a simple bet to make. The grand scheme, though, we need all of this. We need cleaner petroleum. We need some nuclear, and of course hydrogen energy is what we're part of, because economic liberty is tied to energy. Like, if you understand that modern civilization depends on high amounts of energy, and that's what created this. We're not farmers for a reason. It's because of energy. So I think that that's long and short of what I think about this energy risk.
So one of my firm's other theses for a long time was that the changes in policy and technology over the last 10 or 15 years, particularly the twin combination of the shale revolution and clean tech, we're going to basically collar commodity prices for decades. They might drop for a while, they might go up, but quite frankly, you can bring on supply like you never could before, and if you get too high, you're going to have demand destruction. And if you get too low, we'll just pop back up. And then we got plenty of demand to create because the economies are still strong. We view this as a long-term collar. Do you guys agree, disagree? And if I have to put you on the spot, pick your favorite commodity price and tell me what it's going to be in 5 years. You get to pick the commodity price and it's 5 years out. You can't lose. They'll never know. They're not going to hold you to it. So go strong.
Look, I'll really sort of stick to what my knitting is and what I really understand. And what I understand is the uranium market. And uranium is the fuel to run 98 power plants in the United States to generate electricity. Again, 1 in every 5 households is getting its electricity from nuclear power. That uranium is currently being imported. 99% of it is being imported. Now, I'll put it in someone else's word. I'm lucky as an entrepreneur. I have someone in the form of the previous U.S. Energy Secretary, Spencer Abraham, as the chairman of our company. He says when he was Energy Secretary and the U.S. was importing 50% of its oil, that was a national disaster. Today, we're importing 99% of our uranium, mainly from Russia, from Kazakhstan, from Uzbekistan, countries that are not necessarily politically aligned with the U.S. and they're state-owned operations. So I predict that the uranium price, which is today at a 10-year low, below the cost of most miners in the world, including Canada and Australia, which are friends, even they can't make money. I predict the uranium price will revert back to where it was in 2010, which is before it started to have some challenges with issues in Japan. And that was about $70 per pound. Today we're at $25 per pound. So there could be a 3-time increase in the uranium price in the next 5 years.
Uranium 3x in 5 years.
3x in 5 years.
Okay. Navid, you guys are working on things that are attempting to disrupt the power sector. What am I looking at for electricity prices at the wholesale level in 2024?
This energy deploys at 5 cents a kilowatt hour or less. So I think they're going to see a move towards that by starting in mostly off the grid, mining, etc., where that's really just transformational. You know, all of these, whether it's mining for uranium, petroleum, engineering, need a lot of energy to create that energy, right? So I think that you're going to see the biggest factor is the reduction of electricity prices from this new technology that we're involved with.
Craig, so you get to pick, your regulation kicks in next year, right? That's right. So you get to pick next year's price. You're going to be on the spot. Diesel next year.
Diesel, low sulfur.
They're going to trade off this, so don't screw it up.
So low sulfur diesel especially, I can't quote you exactly the pricing right now, but you're looking at probably double that price. Whatever it is right now, it's going to be double that.
You think diesel will double in 12 months?
Yes.
We got uranium 3x in 5 years, diesel doubling in 12 months, and wholesale power prices slipping to 5 cents nationwide by 2024. All right. So you guys got your $1 billion. Whose bet are you taking? Uranium triple, 5 years. Diesel, what was it in 1 year?
Double.
Double today.
I might take the under on that. Yeah. And 5 cent power in 2024 across the nation. Clap? Yes? No? Well, they're not buying you. Doubling diesel? Taking the over on that bet? Oh. And triple uranium price.
Can I sell my point?
Can you sell your?
Can I sell my point?
Go sell your.
Okay, so this new regulation
sell
I was
your
talking about
point.
earlier, the IMO sulfur cap. So all of the high sulfur fuel oil that's being burnt at sea is going to have to be replaced by something. This is 5% of the world's fuel usage is burnt at sea. And so as all of these shipping companies have to buy fuel, they're going to buy low sulfur diesel to make this replacement. As such, that is going to put a drain on the current diesel's usage in every country that uses it. And so that's why we're betting that diesel will be significantly higher a year from now, and actually probably even 2 years from now than it is right now.
So anybody going to change the vote? Dead. I got some. There we go. Go on. Give Craig some love. He's trying here. He's selling, man. Nothing. They're not buying the Dublin, Craig. They're not buying the. Would you take?
That agrees with Steve Forbes. He likes uranium as well, right? So let's give that one to uranium.
Would you take Craig's bet on 1.5, not 2? Still nothing. To be honest, I'd actually take Navid's bet. I think solar prices are not done going down, wind prices are not done going down, gas prices are not done going down. I think the real question is, can uranium keep up? Yeah, because I think we've got a lot of deflationary pressures in that commodity price cycle. We can add more supply than we can add demand these days, and that's the first time we've ever been able to do that in energy. Comments about natural supply. I really don't have a gas guy on the stage, but we'll take that. Yeah, I think the United States is quite capable of adding enough natural gas to swamp the supply anytime it feels like. We can manufacture and we can bring on wells fast now. It's a 6-12 month cycle to get these things up online. This isn't 10-year development in the Gulf of Mexico, deep water gas supposed to come in, Canadian pipeline like it was 20 years ago. So you can add quickly, which means there's downward pressure anytime you see a pump. Doesn't mean the market's going away, but my gosh, those guys can play. And that's what I think the real challenge for some of these other markets is going to be, is how do you keep up with solar and gas? So, which gets us to our next point, which is the favorite one of the day since we started the regulation. It's our trade war.
Hey, just before we do that, because you made the comments about renewables, and I can't let that pass, okay? Everyone in this room, come on, but everyone in this room has to understand, and they do, that renewables work 25% of the time. We don't live in a 25% of the time world. We need electricity around the clock. And the reason why nuclear power is growing is because it works 99% of the time. It's called baseload power. And I'm not advocating for displacing renewables. I advocate for a portfolio. In a portfolio, you need to still have electricity when the sun doesn't shine and when the wind doesn't blow. And the reality is that we subsidize the heck out of renewables in this country. And that's not free markets either. There's something wrong with that. So, ultimately, I think you create a level playing field. Let these energy sources play on a level playing field, and let's have a proper backbone to our energy solution. And that's the way to do it. No more subsidies for renewables, and no more subsidies for things that need it otherwise.
I think it's sold that well.
This is boring, but I agree with you.
Thank you.
But we're not on a level playing field. We're in the middle of the beginnings of a trade war. So who's going to win and lose from this? Or is the trade war just going to peter out in energy and just have no impact on us?
Which way do you want to go?
I'll just say the loser. I know who the loser is. The loser is the consumer, right? Because they're going to end up footing the bill. I don't really think there are any winners.
I want to come back to something that maybe it'll be the last thing I say, so give me a second to finish it. And it really has to do with what President Trump just issued on the weekend. Love him or hate him, he has created the U.S. Nuclear Fuel Working Group. It's going to be headed up by John Bolton. And they have 90 days to determine what to do about the United States dependency on foreign uranium. I call it the 99% problem. Look, even the Russians, who here has heard of a company called Uranium One? Okay, the Russians, under Obama and Clinton, were allowed to buy U.S. uranium assets. They have more influence in this country about the vital commodities that support our electricity grid than we would ever have. I would never be allowed to sell uranium into Russia. And they own assets over here on U.S. soil. In the next 90 days, pay attention to this presidential memoranda that will have to recommend to the president in 90 days how to solve the U.S. dependence on too much foreign uranium, particularly Russian uranium. And that decision could have huge investment impact to companies like mine that are in the U.S. We have projects in Texas and Wyoming, and those are much more stable jurisdictions than what we're currently getting our uranium from. And I think that kind of trade action is more about leveling the playing field. I agree with you. Tariffs are a price on the consumer. But when you have, as a country, that kind of dependency on foreign imports, that's the national security risk. And you can't ignore that and hide behind trade economics, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about this tomorrow at a workshop that I have with Doug Casey at 2:30. But this is something you can come and talk to us at our booth about as well, is the presidential memo on uranium that has just come out.
Okay, so we'll let you have that as your last word. That was kind of our last question, was what's the one thing every smart energy investor ought to be thinking about? And so I'll let the other two guys have their shot at that. One smart thing every energy investor ought to be thinking about right now.
I hate to be a broken record, but I can't help it. This IMO 2020 regulation is going to be super impactful. And if you're paying attention, you're looking to make an investment in the energy industry, you need to look for opportunities where companies have already positioned themselves to be able to take advantage of the change. And I know of one such. I happen to work for one. It's called SGR Energy. Our booth is 605 right by the lounge area. And I'd love to tell you more about our incredible story and the meteoric rise we've had in revenues over the last 3 years.
Navid, one smart thing every energy investor ought to be thinking about right now.
Well, coming from our perspective, transformational technologies, we move our civilization forward with ingenuity, right? Everyone here would agree with that. For example, 2007, Steve Jobs on stage says this changes everything. Nobody knew what he meant, but now you understand how that created a new economy. Smartphones did, because that's Facebook, Google, Amazon wouldn't be what it is without smartphones either. So we're seeing that with energy, with what we're doing. James Woolsey, for example, was a CIA director under Clinton. He's on the board of this company that makes this new energy source. Only one of the firms that does this is about 5 or 6. So we're seeing that as a potential new phase in energy. We need everything we can get on the stage and more. But basically, the more we get, smart energy investors need to be looking at all of that, because that's basically how you create a smart portfolio and hedge all your risks.
So we are out of time. You have your final 3 thoughts. It is the uranium bet, low sulfur diesel regulation shift, and transformational technology. What's your thoughts for the day? Thank our panelists. Really appreciate you guys being here with me.